Ladies and gents, my name is Xander, aka Deislayers, and in this video, we're going to discuss how to use fusion rifles, and arguably something that many of you view as more important, and that is how to beat them. When it comes to fusion rifles, there seems to be a love-hate relationship, just like the one that J. Jonah Jameson has with Spider-Man. To change this mentality, every hairy hooligan out there needs to comprehend how fusion rifles function by asking themselves the questions like, what makes fusions more consistent? Or what makes fusions cross-map at distances that are just absolutely astounding and mind-boggling? This is precisely what we will be discussing, but not just this, analyzing specific tactics to use fusion rifles properly, and in the process of doing so, how to beat them effectively. The only thing left to do is to simply sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, eviscerate that notification button, and let's jump right into the video. First and foremost, understand the ideology that fusions are dynamically different from, say, snipers and shotguns, not just in terms of how they fire unique projectiles, but how each weapon's range and stability stats affect their utility. Now, many of you are probably thinking, Xander, I already know that stability affects a weapon's recoil, while range affects a weapon's maximum damage output at longer distances, yet also correlates to their bullet magnetism and their accuracy. So how exactly are these stats different from one weapon to the next? To you I say, remember that snipers and shotguns fire their projectiles instantly, whereas fusions fire a total of 7 bolts over an X amount of time depending on their charge rate. Thus, stability is a colossal factor into determining a fusion rifle's bolt spread, much like an effective hitbox cone. Yet the same thing cannot be said for, say, stability on snipers or stability on shotguns, since their projectiles are instantaneous. In other words, the tighter a fusion rifle's bolt spread, the more consistent it will become. However, range is also extremely vital when talking about fusions, but the question still arises, is range more important than stability, or is stability more important than range? To answer this pivotal question, grasp that fusions have a maximum damage output, with the range stat that extends to larger distances while simultaneously increasing the bolt magnetism and their accuracy, much the same way the individual shotgun pellet damage works. In correlation with this, fusions also have a consistent minimum damage output that doesn't depend on range in the slightest, much the same way that sniper bullets work with their consistent damage output no matter the range. In essence, this means that fusions are unbelievably unique because they have some of the exact same damage and range characteristics that snipers and shotguns have, yet do not adhere to their instantaneous firing or stability mechanics. With this knowledge, you can completely understand as to why an erentil or a wise and rebuke is like Tony Stark's nanite Iron Man suit, Thanos snapping Guardians out of existence just like that, poof, adios, bye-bye, because those fusions do a maximum 48 damage per bolt up close and personal to a minimum damage of 36 per bolt cross-map distances, aka the opposite side of the universe. No matter how that you look at this, both range and stability are essential to fusion rifle success. But to get those mapping distances that leaves anyone speechless, go for stability and accuracy buffing perks. Why, you ask? Remember, all an erentil or a wise and rebuke needs is 6 of its 7 bolts doing 36 points of damage each to obliterate any guardian anywhere in the solar system, and stability/accuracy buffing perks will easily compress a fusion rifle's bolt spread, making it that much more likely to get that jaw-dropping mapping potential many fusion rifles have. Some of these perks might include under pressure, firmly planted, or tap the trigger, but regardless of how good or bad your RNG luck is, you now possess all the necessary information to how a main ingredient, a tempered dynamo, a loaded question, or even the merciless functions, and as the saying goes, knowledge is power. Now that everyone knows how fusion rifles function, the next tip to utilizing fusion rifles successfully pertains to an essential tactic called Precharging. Basically, Precharging is the ability to charge up any given fusion rifle to its maximum threshold, so that the moment an enemy guardian is within line of sight, boom, instantaneous fusion rifle bolts fly, liquefying all in their path, leaving nothing behind but vaporized steam. If that doesn't sound like a scrumptious cup of coffee, I don't know what does, my friends. But to use Precharging adequately, one must master that fusion rifle's R-type, since that will dictate the weapon's charge time and thus how long to precharge. In association with this, Precharging effectively goes hand in hand with 2 other tactics called quick aiming and map awareness, but more specifically, radar retention. What radar retention pretty much boils down to is the ability to continuously make the best informed decision based upon what the radar is telling you, and this includes things like enemy locations as well as your teammates' locations. On the other hand, quick aiming is pertaining to ADSing at the last possible moment, just before firing those pre-charged fusion rifle bolts, giving the best peripheral vision and precision. By joining just simply these two things together, it prevents stagnation by A, not wasting precious time countered via radar retention, and B, not aiming down sights continuously around every single corner countered via quick aiming. Instead, they promote fluidity, and if you have watched any of my other how-to videos, you know this leads to the anticipation without hesitation mindset. Predicting where enemy guardians are going to be before they are actually there is precisely what anticipation is, and for fusions, this is applied via pre-charging. But the without hesitation part comes into play the moment before you apply quick aiming coupled with radar retention. You might see anywhere from say 1 to 2 or 3 guardians, heck, you might even see an entire enemy team. Instead of panicking, let your split-second decision-making process take action and think which duel to engage in first, so you can then annihilate, decimate, and obliterate the rest with Exodia, sending them all to the Shadow Realm. Before I go any further, understand that everything discussed in the last tip, I will be showing you all more specific examples of in just a couple of minutes. But before I do so, imprint another fusion rifle tip, which is how to maneuver when wielding them. In any kind of crucible engagement, you're always trying to make yourself a harder target to hit, or try to engage from an angle of attack nobody's expecting. This leads to either pre-charging while sliding, timing the charge just as the slide mechanic ends, making yourself a harder target to hit in the process, or pre-charging while jumping, timing the charge just as the enemy target enters your line of sight. No matter which type of engagement occurs, change things up constantly, because if you do one thing or the other too often, predictable patterns set in, just like in Scooby-Doo saying, "I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids." You don't want that, I don't want that, nobody wants that. So keep throwing change-ups, and this can be done with the help from certain exotics, like the Hunter's Stoppies, or the Warlock's Transversive Steps, or even the Titan's Doom Marchers / Lion Rampant. Any of these exotics can help, especially in a slide mechanic, because sliding makes you a smaller target to hit. But more importantly than this, it allows for dipping and diving into cover while giving superb line of sight toward enemy guardians' knees and their feet. Now many of you are probably thinking, Xander, what is the logic behind this madness? Why on earth do I care about seeing my foe's feet / their knees? To you I say, by looking at an enemy guardian's knees / feet, this indicates what direction that guardian is most likely going to take next, since Destiny 2 characters can't change their orientation of their body without changing the rest. Furthermore, all fusion rifles have an innate vertical recoil pattern, regardless of a counterbalance mod or multiple stability increasing perks, making it that much more logical to start a fusion rifle's burst at a character's knees / feet. Combining these maneuvering mechanics with pre-charging, quick aiming, and radar retention tactics, this is where things culminate into a marvelous symbiotic relationship you can practice. And to see all these concepts in action, the next tip has a couple of examples to show you exactly what it looks like. So here we are on Radiant Cliffs, and I'm just about to go towards the B capture point with my Epicurean. I see a couple blips on my radar, and I see that one guy going back towards the junction. So I'm going to push him as fast as I can, slide and pre-charge, boom, got the first one. And the next guy pops out of nowhere, and just like that, got him as well. But then I see one more on my radar via the junction, so I reload, slide in, pre-charge, and got the last guy, no problem, piece of cake. But then lastly, I see one more guardian at the very back of the map there, and yet get him even though he was that far away from me. As I rewind this entire engagement and replay it for you one more time in slow motion, what I'm going to do just before every single engagement is I'm going to put it on pause so that you guys can see exactly where I'm aiming. What you'll notice is that every single time, I'm aiming directly at someone's feet or their knees. And this is going back to what I said from earlier to make it that much more consistent and that much more effective. On top of this, what you'll also notice is that I am doing a pre-charge technique almost every single time. And for that third guardian, it was the definition of pre-charging because I couldn't even see him until the very last possible moment and just happened to get him as he was coming around that corner. The only other thing that I want you guys to really take in from here as well is that I am constantly maneuvering by doing a sliding technique to possibly a jumping technique or to just simply running and then doing a combination of all three. and with this combined, my maneuverability is very unpredictable, and that's great for me, but that much harder for the enemy guardians to actually down me, and thus we get the result that you guys just saw. And taking in those specific things, I want to show you one more example, and this next example just happens to take place on Equinox with the Merciless. As I ADS with my Austringer, I see a guy to my right via my radar retention, but then all of a sudden, I see a guy down to my left-hand side, so I ignore the guy on the right, go for the guy on the bottom, and just as I get him, I then bait the guy who was up top down into the corridor. I happen to get him as well. I see one more guy up top, so I go to attack him, but rather than going for the guy on the right, I go for the guy behind the little cube, get the guy on the interior of the map, and at the very last second there, we happen to trade. As I rewind this entire engagement over for you one more time and play in slow motion, what I really want you guys to pay attention to here is my split-second decision-making process. There was multiple instances where I could have gone for a guy on the right, but rather I chose to go for a different guy who I knew I could get, and then bait the next couple of guardians into a situation that was more advantageous for me. This is what I mean by using the anticipation without hesitation mindset, then also applying all the principles that I taught from earlier about how fusion rifles function. If I didn't ignore one guy and went for the other person, then I would not have been able to do nearly as well as what I did, nor would I have gotten as many kills. So this right here is an absolutely vital skill set for you to master, because that's then going to allow you to not just do good with fusion rifles, but so many other weapons in the game. Also notice that what I did in every single one of these engagements is I used that quick aiming followed by the pre-charging to get one guardian to the next, and that then allowed me to once again have that best decision making process, or rather that split second decision making process, to then get the ideal outcome, making enemy guardians a little bit salty. And seeing some examples applying all the methods discussed so far, the next question that comes to mind is, how do I beat a fusion rifle user? Deislayers, you already know the answer to that question. Throughout the course of this video, you have learned how to use fusion rifles efficiently by understanding their weaknesses and capitalizing on their strengths. So all one has to do to beat fusion rifle users is to simply apply this exact same ideology, but in a vice versa manner, understanding their strengths and capitalizing on their weaknesses. For example, a superb fusion rifle user will be pre-charging around corners using radar retention and quick aiming, but you already know this. So to counter it, listen for a fusion rifle's audio cues so you can then get the drop on them from a perspective the enemy isn't anticipating. If your foe isn't pre-charging at all, then no sweat, as your primary hand cannon shots or shotgun/sniper can easily outplay them in the time that they have to then charge and then fire those fusion rifle bolts. In addition to that, you grasp that fusion rifles have a natural vertical recoil pattern, and that for fusions to be consistent, their bolt spread has to be condensed. So you can then exploit that by attacking your foe in a zigzag directional pattern, causing the enemy's bolt spread to be vast and travel horizontally as well as vertically. In addition to that, you grasp that fusion rifles have a natural vertical recoil pattern, and that for fusions to be consistent, their bolt spread has to be condensed. So you can then exploit that by attacking your foe in a zigzag directional pattern, causing the enemy's bolt spread to be vast and travel horizontally as well as vertically. Following along this exact same wavelength, the same principles apply by utilizing the Hunter's Dodge, the Warlock's Blink or Icarus Dash, and the Titan's Shoulder Charge to evade more fusion rifle bolts, thus making your enemy's fusions that much more inconsistent. Even something just as simple as strafing or jumping at a 45-degree angle can also cause more fusion rifle bolts to miss. The quote-unquote main ingredient to outplaying any fusion rifle user is once again to apply the anticipation without hesitation mindset. You know every single facet of a fusion rifle's strengths and weaknesses, so it's up to you and your split-second decision-making process to time the right appropriate action and get the desired outcome. If you can time everything accordingly, and don't take nearly as long as say Goku to charge his Spirit Bomb attack for 5 freaking episodes, there is no doubt in my mind that nobody will see you coming. And having said all these tips, tricks, and tactics, I think it's safe to say that you now have a very firm comprehension as to not only how to use fusion rifles effectively, but how to beat them as well. We discussed how range and stability specifically affect fusions, ensued by pre-charging, quick aiming, radar retention, and maneuverability techniques either used or to counter fusion rifles appropriately, with a few step-by-step examples breaking everything down. Taking in all this knowledge, I want to hear your thoughts on this down in the comment section below. Did you like it or did you not? Did you find it helpful, or was it complete muff cabbage trash shenanigans? No matter what you guys say, know that I'll be looking forward to it and will always respect your opinion. Lastly, be sure to watch the newest, check the latest, and share, comment, like on social media because you are the greatest. That's pretty much all I've got for you as of right now, Deislayers. And as always, GG TNT.